So after conning Roger Corman to make a $1 million Fantastic Four movie just to keep the rights, Burt Eichinger finally gets to make his big budget Fantastic Four movie, as a result of another rights deadline. Hey everyone, it's Alexander Robinson. Welcome to the channel, and this is my review for Fantastic Four, which came out in 2005, 20 years ago, and is directed by Tim Story. Depending on who you asked at the time, this is either the first feature film adaptation of the Fantastic Four, or the first reboot of the Fantastic Four after the unreleased Roger Corman movie. But whatever the case, this one's produced by 20th Century Fox and stars Ioan Gruffudd as Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards, Jessica Alba as Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman, Chris Evans as the Human Torch / Johnny Storm, and Michael Chiklis as the Thing / Ben Grimm. And the movie once again follows their origin. As they are in space, they encounter some unusual activity that basically manipulates their DNA, gives them superpowers, and thus they have to learn to use these powers, become the Fantastic Four, and fight off their arch nemesis, Victor Von Doom. Back in the early 2000s, there were 4 superheroes that I was into at the time: Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, and the Hulk. Superman and Batman mainly because of their respective animated series from the 90s. The Hulk because it's a giant monster, and you know me, I like giant monsters. And Spider-Man because he was always the most recognizable and the coolest of those superheroes. So I was not familiar with Fantastic Four at all, and given that I'm more of a movie guy, my first exposure to the Fantastic Four was this very movie. And I remember seeing it in theaters 20 years ago and didn't like it at all. It just was rather unremarkable and didn't make me really feel invested in this team. However, as time goes on, and this is a really weird thing that's happening, there's been sort of a revisionist history between movies like Shrek the Third, the Michael Bay Transformers, and now Tim Story's Fantastic Four movies, where people are saying, these actually are great movies, let's not pretend that they're bad. And I'm just sitting here going, no, these are bad movies. There was a reason why we made fun of them and criticized them at the time, because they really are that bad. But in Fantastic Four's defense, I only saw this when it came out in theaters. I had no desire to rewatch it up until this review, because we've got First Steps coming out next weekend. And I thought, you know what? I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. Like, it's been 20 years. Maybe there was something about this movie that I didn't really understand at the time. Then I watched the movie, and by the time it ended, I was like, nope. My 14-year-old self was right to think that this was a terrible movie back then. It's interesting to watch a movie like this, considering how much superhero movies have evolved since 2005, in the era of cinematic universes, trying to stay faithful to the source material, or at least more faithful than back in the day, and just embracing the overall silliness of the source material. So this is very much a tamer movie in comparison, but it just really doesn't work. The biggest problem with this movie is that it's boring. Most of the movie is just spent on these characters trying to learn their powers, trying to work together as a team. There's not really a whole lot going for it. If anything, it plays out more like a sitcom than anything, and not a very funny one. The casting is 50-50 when it comes to the Fantastic Four. Chris Evans and Michael Chiklis as Johnny Storm and Ben Grimm, respectively, are the 2 best actors in the movie. Chris Evans just does a really good job at playing this cocky asshole who is a womanizer. He thinks about himself a lot. He does a really good job, and there are some moments between him and Michael Chiklis that kind of made me laugh. Michael Chiklis as Ben Grimm is more the character that you feel sympathy for, because he's the one that suffers the most after this accident, turning into a giant rock monster. And the one scene in this movie that actually works really well is when he's wearing the trench coat and hat, and he tries to call his wife. She comes out to try and see him, but when he reveals himself to be the Thing, she is freaked out, runs away, and you feel sorry for Ben, especially later on in the movie when his wife sees him again after he's a hero. And what does she do? She takes off her wedding ring and just leaves it on the ground. And I'm like, poor Ben. Like, I really feel sorry for this guy. And that's all I have to say in terms of the positives with this movie, Chris Evans and Michael Chiklis. As for Ioan Gruffudd and Jessica Alba as Reed Richards and Sue Storm, I didn't like either of them at all. With Ioan Gruffudd, I've seen him be a good actor in a couple movies, but he just doesn't really work as Reed Richards. He comes across more like a goofball, and I don't buy into the fact at all that he's the smartest man in the world. He just seems... he's very awkward in a way, and doesn't really fit the description of Reed Richards. And then for Jessica Alba, I feel so bad for her because I was in love with Jessica Alba back in the day. I thought she was absolutely gorgeous, and she still is today, but this is the thing that everybody said when she was popping up in all these movies back then. She's beautiful, but man, she can't act. And that's how I felt about her as Sue Storm. She just really couldn't act throughout a lot of this movie. And there's a running joke in this movie that carries on into the next one that I really hate with Sue Storm. So, you know, Sue Storm is the Invisible Woman. She can turn invisible, but her regular street clothes do not. So she has to basically strip naked to get past all these people so she can turn invisible. And I'm like, that's very tasteless and kind of demeaning for an iconic character like Sue Storm. Then you have Julian McMahon as Victor Von Doom. Now, for those of you who don't know, Julian McMahon passed away 2 weeks ago on July 2nd, and apparently he died from cancer. Some sort of cancer, which is just absolutely tragic. Cancer is just the scum of the world. And somebody commented on my Roger Corman review to pay tribute to Julian McMahon. I can't really do that. Not out of any disrespect, because again, dying of cancer is a horrible way to go, no matter how old you are. But I only know Julian McMahon through these Fantastic Four movies. I haven't seen anything else that he's in, so I'm not really familiar with his body of work. So I can only talk about his performance as Victor Von Doom. And as Victor Von Doom, I'm sorry, he's terrible as well. I didn't really talk about Doom in the last Fantastic Four movie because he was just there to be the evil, over-the-top villain. I mean, he's the leader of Latveria, the dictator. He has an army of minions around him. So, in a way, like, it's a goofy interpretation of Victor Von Doom, but at least it feels like Dr. Doom. In this movie, Victor Von Doom is just a generic businessman. They basically turned him into Norman Osborn from the Spider-Man movies. I didn't find him to be very threatening. I found Julian McMahon's performance to be very bland. And they don't even bother to touch upon Victor Von Doom's Latvian history. There's only one mention that he's from Latveria. He's not even a dictator from there. Again, he's just a generic corporate businessman. And there's not much to this character. I don't buy into the rivalry that he has with Reed Richards, which is kind of the whole reason Doom is a villain and why he specifically hates Reed Richards, because he's continuously trying to prove that he is smarter than the smartest man alive. And that never happens in this movie. So again, no disrespect to Julian McMahon, who passed away 2 weeks ago, but I didn't think he made a good Victor Von Doom at all. And also, I know that's his name in the comics, but considering that they turned Doom into a businessman in this movie, in these two movies, why would you keep the name Victor Von Doom? Like, couldn't you have changed the last name to something else? I know that's not in the comics, but you gotta think logically. If you're this CEO, if you're this rich businessman, you don't want your last name to be Doom, because nobody will take you seriously unless you end up becoming a ruthless dictator from Latveria. Nobody's gonna do business with a guy named Victor Von Doom. I look at that name and go, yeah, we're not doing business with you. I'm gonna see what Norman Osborn's up to. Oh wait, this was before the MCU, so these series aren't connected. Different studios. However, with the exception of Jessica Alba, I'm not gonna criticize any of the actors in this movie for their bad performances, because this movie is just so lazily directed. Tim Story, I never known him to be a really good director. He did The Blackening a couple years ago, which I heard was really good, so I want to check that out for myself. But between these Fantastic Four movies and Tom and Jerry, I just never found him to be a good director at all. So I think most of the acting is more the director's fault. I single out Jessica Alba as being the exception because in everything that she's in that I've seen, I've never known her to be a good actress. The movie also has some terrible special effects, and I mean, oh my god, how are these effects so bad in a big budget studio film? Now, this movie apparently didn't cost as much as other superhero movies coming out at the time. It didn't cost as much as Spider-Man 2, which came out the year prior. It didn't cost as much as Batman Begins, which came out the same year. So it cost significantly less, but these visual effects are on the level of Jason X from 2001. I give a pass for Jason X because the Friday the 13th series is known to be super cheap anyway, but that movie cost about $14 million at most. This Fantastic Four cost between $85 to $100 million. And for it to have special effects that are just as bad as a movie that cost a fraction of that, that is straight up embarrassing. And what's even more embarrassing for this movie is that the same day I rewatched this movie, I showed my girlfriend Peter Jackson's King Kong for the first time, which also came out 20 years ago. And that movie still holds up. Granted, it cost about like $200 something million, so a lot more money than Fantastic Four, but even then, like Peter Jackson's King Kong 20 years later holds up VFX wise. This does not. The action is also very uninspired. There's not a lot of action in this movie. You don't really get that until Doom puts on the mask and fights the Fantastic Four, and even then it's just kinda eh. So is this a bad movie? Undeniably it is. Is it a god-awful movie? I don't think so. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's a perfectly harmless movie, but that's not good enough. Like I said earlier, Spider-Man 2 came out the year before, and this was the year that we got Batman Begins, which is amazing. You could tell that the 2000s was still the era when everybody was trying to like actually nail what a great comic book movie should be. Because prior to the MCU and The Dark Knight, I could only count 5 movies that are really good in this era of comic book films. The first 2 X-Men, the first 2 Spider-Man films, and Batman Begins. Fantastic Four is one of those movies when people say, oh, comic book movies were so much better in the 2000s, that I point to and go, no it wasn't, because we had this, we had the Hulk, we had Daredevil, we had Ghost Rider, we had Elektra, so no, this era was not the best for comic book movies, and this is one of many examples. I say don't waste your money on it. I don't even think it's enjoyable in the same way that the Roger Corman movie was enjoyable, because it's just more dull than anything. And the fact that the Roger Corman movie worked with so little money, there's an admiration to it. And plus, there was no major studio backing this version of Fantastic Four compared to this one. So this one just feels a little more corporate. Yeah. I'm not a fan. I should have stuck with my guts back in 2005 when I saw this as a 14-year-old and went, yeah, this sucks. And there you go, that's my review for Fantastic Four. I hope you enjoyed it. Now again, next week is the release of Fantastic Four First Steps. So I'm going to be reviewing the next movie tomorrow. Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. And if you thought I had some harsh things to say about the first movie, just wait until you hear what I have to say about Rise of the Silver Surfer. But tune in tomorrow for that review. But until then, I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I want to give a special thank you to my subscribers and YouTube members right over here. You guys are the reason why this channel continues to grow every day, and if you want to help financially support the channel, you could do so via YouTube memberships for as little as $1.99 a month. But until next time, I want to know what you guys think about Fantastic Four from 2005. Whatever your opinions are, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. If you want to find me elsewhere on the internet, you can find me on these social media platforms and my theme park and travel channel right here on YouTube. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.